Steve Harvey stops the show after boy reveals why he sleeps in a car. There was a time when childhood meant playing outside until the streetlights came on, eating dinner with your family, and falling asleep in your own bed without a single worry in the world. But for one 10-year-old boy who walked onto the Family Feud stage in October 2024, childhood looked nothing like that. When Steve Harvey asked him a simple question during the game, the boy's answer was so heartbreaking that Steve did something he had never done before. He stopped the entire show. The cameras kept rolling. The audience went silent. And what happened over the next 20 minutes would leave every single person in that studio in tears. This is a story about what happens when the world fails a child, and what happens when one man decides to do something about it. Before we go any further, do yourself a favor and hit that like button and subscribe to this channel right now. You are not going to want to miss a single second of what comes next. The Williams family from Memphis, Tennessee was not your typical Family Feud family. Most families who came on the show arrived in matching outfits, full of energy, laughing and joking around before the cameras even started rolling. The Williams family was different. They were quieter, more careful with their words. They smiled, but if you looked closely, you could see something behind those smiles that told you life had not been easy for them. There were 5 of them standing behind the podium that day. Patricia Williams was 41 years old. She was the family captain, and she stood at the front with her shoulders back and her chin held high, the way a woman does when she has been carrying the weight of the world and refuses to let anyone see her buckle. Patricia worked 2 jobs. During the day, she was a cashier at a grocery store in South Memphis. At night, she cleaned offices in a downtown building from 9 until 1 in the morning. She had been working like this for almost 2 years, ever since her husband Raymond had passed away from pancreatic cancer. Standing next to Patricia was her older sister, Wanda, who was 45 and worked as a home health aide. Wanda had moved in with Patricia after Raymond died to help with the kids and split the rent. Then there was Patricia's cousin, Terrence, who was 38 and drove trucks for a local delivery company. He was the kind of man who showed up every time the family needed something fixed or someone needed a ride somewhere. He never complained, and he never asked for anything in return. The 4th member of the team was Patricia's niece, Brianna, who was 23 and worked part-time at a daycare while going to community college at night. She wanted to become a social worker because, as she would later tell the cameras, she had seen firsthand what happened to families when the system let them down. And then there was the 5th member of the team, the one who would change everything. His name was Isaiah. He was 10 years old. He was Patricia's youngest son, and he was the reason the family was standing on that stage in the first place. Isaiah was small for his age, with big brown eyes that seemed to take in everything around him without saying a word. He was wearing a white button-down shirt that was slightly too big for him, and he had tucked it into his pants with the careful attention of a boy who wanted to look his best even though his best was borrowed from his older cousin. Isaiah had been the one who wrote to Family Feud, not Patricia, not Wanda, not any of the adults. Isaiah had gone to the public library after school one afternoon, sat down at a computer, and typed out an application to be on the show. The librarian had helped him figure out the website, and Isaiah had filled in every line with the slow, determined handwriting of a child who knew exactly what he was doing and exactly why he was doing it. When the producers called Patricia to tell her the family had been selected, she had no idea her son had even applied. The Williams family was facing off against the Douglas family from Nashville. The Douglases were loud, funny, and competitive in all the right ways. They were a great Family Feud family. But from the moment the Williams family walked out, there was something about them that caught the audience's attention. Maybe it was the way Patricia kept her hand on Isaiah's shoulder, like she was protecting him from something invisible. Maybe it was the way Isaiah kept looking up at the studio lights with wide, amazed eyes like he had never seen anything so bright and beautiful. Whatever it was, people noticed, and people cared. Steve Harvey came out and did his usual thing. He cracked jokes, talked to both families, and got the audience warmed up. When he got to the Williams family, he kneeled down to talk to Isaiah the way he always did with the younger contestants. "Hey, little man, what is your name?" he asked with a big smile. Isaiah looked up at Steve with those enormous brown eyes and said, "My name is Isaiah Williams, sir, and I am the one who got us on this show." Steve laughed and looked at Patricia, who nodded with a mixture of pride and emotion. "He sure did, Mr. Harvey. He applied all by himself. We did not even know until the phone rang." Steve shook his head in amazement. "Isaiah, you are something else, young man. How old are you?" 10, sir. "And why did you want to be on Family Feud?" Isaiah paused for just a second, and then he said something that made the audience go completely quiet. "Because my mama works so hard and I wanted to help." Steve's smile softened. He put his hand on Isaiah's head and said, "Well, let us see if we can make that happen." Then he stood up and started the game, not knowing that Isaiah was about to reveal something that would stop the show cold. The first 2 rounds went well for the Williams family. Patricia gave solid answers. Wanda got a #1 response that made the whole family jump up and down. Terrence surprised everyone with a clever answer that even Steve said he would not have thought of. The family was clicking and the audience was firmly behind them. Isaiah had not answered a question yet. He was standing at the end of the line, watching everything with quiet intensity. Every time someone in his family got an answer right, he would clap his hands and smile. But he did not shout or dance the way kids usually did on the show. He was focused. He was waiting for his turn. In the 3rd round, Steve read the question. "We surveyed 100 people. Name a place where you fall asleep that is not your bed." It was a lighthearted question, the kind of question that usually got answers like the couch, at work, or in church. The audience chuckled in anticipation. It was Isaiah's turn to answer. Patricia gave him an encouraging nod, and Isaiah stepped up to the microphone. Steve smiled down at him. "All right, Isaiah, name a place where you fall asleep that is not your bed." Isaiah did not hesitate. He looked straight at Steve Harvey and said in a clear, small voice, "The car." The board lit up. It was on the board. The audience clapped, but Steve did not move on to the next contestant. Something about the way Isaiah had said it made Steve pause. It was not just an answer. It was not a guess. It was said with the certainty of experience, the way you talk about something you know because you live it every single day. Steve looked at Isaiah for a long moment. The studio got quieter. Then Steve asked a question that was not on any card. "Isaiah, why did you say the car?" The producers in the control room later said they almost cut to commercial. That was not how the game worked. Steve was not supposed to ask follow-up questions like that. But something in Steve's gut told him to ask, and Steve Harvey had learned a long time ago to trust his gut. Isaiah looked up at Steve, then back at his mother, then back at Steve. And in that quiet, honest voice that only a child can have, he said, "Because that is where I sleep sometimes. When Mama is working her night job, my auntie watches me. But sometimes Mama picks me up real late and she is too tired to drive all the way home. So we sleep in the car in the parking lot until the sun comes up. She puts blankets in the back seat for me and she sleeps in the front. She thinks I do not know she is crying, but I can hear her." The studio went completely silent, not the polite silence of an audience waiting for the next joke. The heavy, painful silence of 200 people who just had their hearts broken at the same time. Steve Harvey stood there with his mouth slightly open. His hand was still holding the question card, but it was shaking. Patricia had covered her face with both hands and her shoulders were trembling. Wanda had her arm around her sister and Terrence was staring at the floor, his jaw tight with emotion. Brianna was openly crying. Isaiah did not understand why everyone was so upset. He looked around the studio with confusion on his face. To him, sleeping in the car was just part of his life. It was not dramatic. It was not a story. It was just what happened on the nights when his mama could not make it home. He had no idea that what he had just said was going to change his family's life forever. Steve Harvey took a deep breath. Then he did something that had never happened in the history of Family Feud. He turned to the production crew, held up his hand, and said, "Stop the game. We need to stop the game right now." The audience gasped. The Douglas family on the other side of the stage looked at each other in confusion. The producers in the booth were talking into their headsets, trying to figure out what was happening. But Steve was already walking toward Isaiah, and everyone in that studio knew that whatever was about to happen was more important than any game. Steve kneeled down so he was eye level with Isaiah. The cameras zoomed in, and millions of people who would eventually watch this clip online saw what happened next in perfect detail. Steve's eyes were red. His voice, the voice that had made millions of people laugh over decades of comedy and television, was barely above a whisper. "Isaiah, can I ask you something?" Steve said. Isaiah nodded. "Do you sleep in the car a lot?" Isaiah thought about it for a second, the way kids do when they are trying to be accurate. "Maybe 2 or 3 times a week. It depends on when Mama finishes work. Sometimes she finishes early and we go home. But sometimes the building takes longer to clean and we do not get done until real late." He paused. "I do not mind it, Mr. Harvey. The back seat is not that bad. Mama always makes sure I have my blanket and my pillow. She calls it our camping trip." Steve closed his eyes and pressed his lips together. When he opened them again, tears were running down his face. He did not wipe them away. He did not try to hide them. He just let them fall. "Isaiah," Steve said, "you said you applied to this show because you wanted to help your mama. Is that right?" Isaiah nodded seriously. "Yes, sir. Mama says we just need to get a little bit ahead. She says if she could just save up enough, we could move to an apartment closer to her night job so she would not have to drive so far. Then we would not have to sleep in the car anymore. I thought if we won the money on the show, maybe that would be enough." Patricia was sobbing now. She tried to step forward, but Wanda held her gently, knowing that this moment needed to play out. The audience was weeping. Strangers were holding each other's hands. One woman in the front row later told a reporter that it was the most heartbreaking thing she had ever witnessed in person. Steve stood up and faced the audience. His voice was stronger now, carrying the weight of a man who had made a decision. "Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to listen to me. This boy right here is 10 years old. 10 years old. And he is sitting in a library after school, filling out applications to get on a game show, not because he wants to be on TV, not because he thinks it would be fun, but because he wants to help his mother. He wants his mama to not have to sleep in a car. He wants to give her the thing that every mother deserves, a safe place to rest at the end of a long day." Steve's voice broke on the last few words, but he pushed through. "I have been doing this show for a long time. I have met thousands of families, and I can tell you right now that what this family is going through is not rare. There are millions of families in this country who are one paycheck away from sleeping in their cars. Millions of mothers who work 2 jobs and still cannot make ends meet. Millions of children who know things that no child should have to know, and most of the time nobody sees them. Nobody hears them. But today we see you. Today we hear you. And today we are going to do something about it." Steve Harvey turned to his producers. The cameras were still rolling. The audience was still crying. And Steve made an announcement that would be replayed millions of times around the world. "We are going to finish this game," Steve said, "because this family came here to play and they deserve to play. But regardless of whether the Williams family wins or loses today, I am personally going to make sure that this family has a safe place to live. I'm not going to stand on this stage and let a 10-year-old boy go back to sleeping in a car. That is not happening, not on my watch." The audience erupted. People jumped to their feet. The applause was so loud that it sounded like thunder rolling through the studio. The Douglas family, the opposing team, started clapping too. Roberto Douglas, their family captain, walked across the stage and shook Patricia's hand. "Whatever happens in this game," he said loud enough for the microphones to pick up, "your family already won." The game resumed, but it was different now. Everyone in the studio was playing for the Williams family, even the Douglases. When the Williams family needed an answer, the audience was holding their breath. When they got one right, the cheering shook the walls. Isaiah answered 2 more questions during the remaining rounds, and both times he gave top answers. The kid who had sat in a library and figured out how to get his family on television was now playing the game like he had been preparing for it his entire life. And in a way, he had been. The Williams family won. They made it to fast money, and Patricia and Wanda combined for 212 points, winning the $20,000 prize. When the final score was revealed, Isaiah ran to his mother and threw his arms around her waist, burying his face in her shirt. "We did it, Mama," he said. "We did it, no more car." Patricia dropped to her knees and held her son so tight it looked like she would never let go. "Baby, you did this," she whispered, but the microphone caught every word. "You did this for us. You are the strongest person I have ever known, and you are only 10 years old." But Steve Harvey was not done. After the celebration settled, Steve walked back to center stage and addressed the cameras directly. "I said I was going to make sure this family had a safe place to live, and I meant it. So here is what is going to happen." He paused. "My foundation is going to cover 6 months of rent for the Williams family in a new apartment. We are going to make sure it is close to Patricia's jobs, so she does not have to drive across the city in the middle of the night. We are going to make sure Isaiah has his own room with his own bed. And we are going to set up a fund so that people who want to help this family can contribute to their future." Patricia collapsed. She literally fell to the floor, overwhelmed by emotion. Wanda and Terrence rushed to help her up, but Patricia was laughing and crying at the same time, the kind of release that comes when a weight you have been carrying for years is suddenly lifted off your shoulders. Isaiah stood next to her, holding her hand, looking up at Steve Harvey like he was looking at a superhero. Steve kneeled down one more time and looked Isaiah in the eyes. "Isaiah, I need you to hear me. What you did writing that letter, getting your family on this show, that is not something a normal 10-year-old does. That is something a man does. You are going to do great things in this world, young man. I can see it. And I want you to promise me something." "What, Mr. Harvey?" "Promise me that when you grow up and you are in a position to help somebody, you will remember this moment. You will remember what it felt like to need help, and you will reach your hand out to somebody else." Isaiah nodded solemnly. "I promise, sir." The audience was on their feet again. The Douglas family was crying. The production crew was crying. The cameramen were crying. It was one of those moments that reminded everyone in the room why they worked in television in the first place. When the episode aired 5 weeks later, the response was unlike anything Family Feud had ever seen. The clip of Isaiah telling Steve Harvey about sleeping in the car was viewed over 40 million times in the first 72 hours. It was shared on every social media platform, covered by every major news outlet, and discussed on talk shows, radio programs, and podcasts across the country. But the numbers only told part of the story. What really mattered was what happened to the Williams family after the cameras stopped rolling. True to his word, Steve Harvey's foundation secured a 3-bedroom apartment for Patricia and her children in a neighborhood that was 15 minutes from both of her jobs. Isaiah got his own room for the first time in almost 2 years. When he walked in and saw the bed, a brand new twin bed with a comforter that had spaceships on it because Steve's team had asked Isaiah what he liked, and he had said outer space. Isaiah sat down on the edge of the mattress and did not say a word for almost a full minute. Then he looked at his mother and said, "Mama, it does not move. It just stays right here." Patricia understood what he meant. After months of sleeping in a car that was always parked in a different lot, always moving, never permanent, a bed that stayed in one place was the most beautiful thing her son had ever seen. The fund that Steve set up for the family raised over $300,000 in the first 2 weeks. Donations came from every state in the country and from 26 different countries. People sent $10. People sent $10,000. A retired couple in Ohio sent their entire tax refund with a note that said, "We raised 3 kids and never once had to sleep in a car. No family should have to. Please use this to help." A group of firefighters in Chicago organized a fundraiser and sent the proceeds. A 6th-grade class in Oregon held a bake sale and sent $87.43 in an envelope with a handwritten card that said, "Dear Isaiah, you are brave. Love, Mrs. Patterson's class." The story did not stop there. Patricia was able to quit her night cleaning job within 3 months because the fund had given the family enough of a financial cushion to survive on one income while she looked for better paying daytime work. A local company in Memphis saw the episode and offered Patricia a full-time position in their customer service department with benefits and a salary that was nearly double what she had been making between her 2 jobs. Patricia accepted, and for the first time since Raymond's death, she was home every night to tuck her children into bed. Isaiah became something of a local hero in Memphis. His school held an assembly in his honor, and the principal talked about how Isaiah's determination and love for his family represented the best of what their community could be. Isaiah was embarrassed by the attention but handled it with the same quiet grace he had shown on the Family Feud stage. When his classmates asked him what it was like to be on TV, he would shrug and say, "It was cool, but the best part is my mama does not cry at night anymore." Steve Harvey featured the Williams family on his daytime talk show 2 months after the episode aired. Patricia looked like a different woman. She was rested. She was smiling without the shadow of exhaustion behind her eyes. She told Steve that the first night in their new apartment, she had stood in the doorway of Isaiah's room and watched him sleep in his new bed for almost an hour. "I just needed to see it," she said. "I needed to see my baby sleeping somewhere safe and warm and permanent." "I needed to know it was real." Steve asked Isaiah how he liked his new room. Isaiah grinned, the first truly carefree, childlike grin anyone had seen from him, and said, "It is so good, Mr. Harvey. I have a desk now where I do my homework, and I have a window. I can see the sky when I wake up." Steve had to take a moment to compose himself before he could continue the interview. The ripple effects of Isaiah's story spread far beyond the Williams family. The clip inspired a national conversation about working families and housing insecurity. Advocacy organizations used Isaiah's story to push for policy changes at the local and state level. A nonprofit in Memphis launched a program specifically designed to help single parents who were working multiple jobs but still could not afford stable housing. They called it the Isaiah Project, and within its first year, it had helped over 70 families find permanent housing. Schools across the country began using Isaiah's story in their classrooms to teach children about empathy, resilience, and the idea that one person, no matter how young, could make a difference. Teachers reported that students who watched the clip often wanted to talk about what they could do to help people in their own communities. Some classes organized food drives. Others wrote letters to local politicians. One school in Texas started a program where students could nominate families in their neighborhood who needed help, and the school would connect them with resources. The Douglas family, who had been the opponents that day, stayed in touch with the Williams family. Roberto Douglas started a small fund through his church in Nashville that helped families cover emergency housing costs. He told his congregation that standing on that stage and watching Isaiah tell his story had changed his perspective on everything. "I went on Family Feud to win money," he said. "I left understanding that some people are playing for survival. That changes you." 1 year after the episode aired, Family Feud invited the Williams family back for a special follow-up segment. Isaiah walked onto the stage wearing a brand new suit that actually fit him, and the audience gave him a standing ovation that lasted nearly 2 minutes. Steve Harvey walked out and hugged Isaiah like he was hugging his own son. "1 year ago," Steve said to the audience, "this young man stood right here and told me he sleeps in a car. Today I want you to see what has happened since." A video played on the big screen showing the Williams family in their new apartment. It showed Isaiah's room with his spaceship comforter and his desk by the window. It showed Patricia cooking dinner in a real kitchen. It showed Isaiah doing homework at his desk while his older sister helped him with math. It showed the family sitting together at a dinner table, laughing and talking the way families are supposed to. When the video ended, Steve turned to Isaiah. "Isaiah, what do you want to be when you grow up?" Isaiah thought for a moment. Then he said, "I want to be someone who helps families find homes, because every kid deserves to sleep in a bed that does not move." The audience lost it. Steve lost it. Patricia was holding Gloria's hand and crying tears that for the first time in a very long time had nothing to do with pain and everything to do with pride. Steve addressed the camera one final time. "I have said it before and I will say it again. This show is not about the game. It is about the families. It is about real people with real problems and real love. Isaiah Williams is 10 years old and he is already a better man than most of the adults I know. He saw his mama struggling. He did not complain. He did not give up. He went to a library and he found a way. That is what heroes do. They find a way." In the years that followed, Isaiah kept his promise to Steve Harvey. He excelled in school, driven by the same determination that had led him to that library computer. Patricia remarried 3 years later to a man named David, a mechanic who treated Isaiah and his sister like his own children. The family moved into a small house with a backyard, and Patricia often said that the sound of her children playing outside was the most beautiful music she had ever heard. The Isaiah Project grew beyond Memphis and expanded into 6 other cities, helping hundreds of families every year find stable housing. Isaiah himself volunteered with the organization as soon as he was old enough, mentoring younger children who were going through the same things he had experienced. He never forgot what it felt like to sleep in a car, and he never stopped working to make sure other kids did not have to. Steve Harvey kept a framed photo on his desk of the moment Isaiah hugged his mother after winning fast money. He talked about Isaiah in interviews for years afterward, always making the same point. That boy did not wait for someone to save him. He saved his family at 10 years old. And he did it with a computer at the public library and a heart bigger than anyone I have ever met. If that does not restore your faith in humanity, I do not know what will. Patricia, whenever she was asked about that day, always said the same thing. "My son saw me at my lowest. He saw me crying in the front seat of a car at 2 in the morning. And instead of being angry at the world, he decided to do something about it. I spent his whole life trying to protect him. Turns out he was the one protecting me." If this story touched your heart, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you do not miss stories like this one. Leave a comment below and tell us what you think about what Isaiah did. Share this video with someone who needs to be reminded that even in the hardest times, hope finds a way. We will see you in the next one.